Hey everybody, my name is Lucy. My company name is lamaisonjuju LLC, and online I use the handle Lucy's Astrology. This is a video on psychic abilities. The reason that I'm making the video is because throughout the years I have had a lot of clients ask me a lot of questions, and I found myself in this conundrum where I couldn't answer everything to a depth that would give them a really good answer. And I also found myself repeating some of the same things. So I figured that I would make this video to use as a reference where if someone asks me a question, I can refer back to it and say, watch that video. It's going to have some sections. The first section that I want to get into is, before I get into the different abilities, what is a psychic? How does the psychic ability range work? And how do the categories go? How is it broken down? Let's get into that. So the first thing I'm going to cover is, what is a psychic? Well, the first thing you have to understand is that every human being on this planet has senses. Some people are born with some kind of impairment. Maybe some people can't smell, some people can't hear, some people can't see, some people can't feel. There are exceptions in the human race, and some people have challenges. Sometimes it's an injury when the mother is pregnant. Sometimes it's all kind of genetic anomalies. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's like trauma due to injury. And a bunch of other things, right? But mainly it is safe to say, in the broad general term, humans all have the senses. What are the 5 senses? Feel, touch, taste, smell, and hear. Now, you probably have heard throughout history that the term the 6th sense exists. So there's been books with that title throughout the centuries, magazine articles, newspaper articles, scripts, movie plays, films, novels, the whole 9 yards. So a lot of content has sometimes been titled the 6th sense or 6 senses, and that's referring to here's another catchphrase for it, the third eye. So mainly it would be an eye here. No, we're not Cyclops. Well, no, actually Cyclops would be not a third eye up here. It's really one eye in Greek mythology. It would be just one eyeball. But anyway, but sometimes people envision a Cyclops with 2 eyes and then the eye on the forehead. But anyway, so the third eye would be, so 1 and 2 and 3, right? That's what people envision. So the third eye, the 6th sense, these are the terms of psychic knowledge of what's under the veil, or what is out there in the beyond, or what's out there in the cosmic plane, if you will. So these terms all mean psychic. What is a psychic? Well, when it comes down to it, first let's go to the head of the English language, which would be Oxford in England, and let's look at their term. All right, so let's look at the Oxford definition of psychic. So, in reading from the dictionary, verbatim, the definition of psychic is relating to or denoting faculties or phenomenon that are apparently inexplicable by natural laws, especially involving, and then they add 2 abilities, 2 of the many abilities. They mention telepathy or clairvoyance. Okay, so again, relating to or denoting faculties or phenomenon that are apparently inexplicable by natural laws. Okay, so in other words, when someone knows what's in the beyond, and there's no scientific way to prove of how they knew it. That's a very loose definition. So we're going to move forward. The word psychic is a blanket term. Why is that? Because let's picture an umbrella, and there's lots of little raindrops under it. It's supposed to be on top of the raindrops, but you get the picture. It's encompassing a whole cluster of information. We live in a world now where words are changing certain meanings. I mean, that happens through every generation, but I should say societal generation, not familial generations, because those are different sociologically. But nevertheless, we live in a world where now you'll hear certain magazines or films or something in the media say, oh, they were a psychic. Or another thing, oh no, they were a clairvoyant, not just a psychic. Or, oh no, they're a medium, not a psychic. Or they're a psychic, not a medium. Or they're a clairvoyant and a medium. Or they're a psychic medium. So if you start getting caught up in that, you know, honestly, it's a bunch of BS, because at the end of the day, we're going to break it all down, and you're going to see how people are labeling things, abilities, with what they believe the person is able to do, versus that's not the skill. A person that is not a psychic cannot label psychics. Oh, they did this to me, and I was realizing this in the reading. So they are this type of person because I received this reading, and they are this type of, they have these abilities because I received this type of reading. You wouldn't know. The person receiving the reading has no clue. It's the person giving the reading. Just like if you receive equations solved by your math students, and you are a mathematician, and one of them in your class is a prodigy, and one of them is just a very hardworking A student, and one of them cheated, you're going to get the same result by all of them. And you know, you really can't tell unless you put them through evaluation. All right, so the receiver of the reading is in no position. They have no authority to label what a person giving the reading is capable of. All right, so let's start right there. So don't get caught up in they're this, not this, this one, and this one used tools, and this one didn't use tools. That's so ignorant. The first one, now that we understand the first point, which is the blanket term, how things are, the blanket term of psychic. Understand that psychic is, when you say psychic to a bunch of people, it's not depicting or showing one thing. It's a bunch of stuff. Someone might picture a fortune teller. Someone might picture a crystal ball reader. Someone might picture someone just holding their hands like this. Everybody has a different visual. Why is that? Because not even the Oxford Dictionary can give you a precise definition. It's hinting at, well, it's when people can kind of do stuff you can't really explain, like these two things. That's why. So now let's get further. How do you break up the term psychic? I like psychic term. I use it because it's an umbrella term. You can shove everything into the suitcase and it all fits. But when you're being specific, then it's a bullshit term. And let's break that down. There's going to be 3 different sections to really understanding psychic. Section number 1 is called divining. Everything regarding divination. The second category of understanding psychic abilities is going to be with mediumship, and it's its own category. And the third one is going to be through magical practice, and that's going to be the third one. Now let me explain why I'm breaking that down. Because abilities are different than learned skills. And you can improve abilities because abilities are composed by skill sets. But skill sets do not equal abilities. So one is natural and one is superimposed by learning and training the brain. Some of these are only available if naturally born, and other ones can be heightened through use. So because of that, there's different categories of how you use these abilities. And when it comes down to it, when you use them, it's either going to be through magical practice, through mediumship, or through divination. And that will make a lot of sense to you when I start breaking them down. There are hundreds of abilities. And the reason why there are hundreds is because the human race is always learning, writing, observing, and discovering. And a lot of things, because of the phenomenon of the interweb and the internet itself, both externally and internally as a subculture, or mother of multi-subcultures encompassed within, multi-niches inside those subcultures. Because of this ever-growing evolutionary experience, human experience that we're having, there are always new terms popping up, but you can't reinvent the wheel. So there are different ways to pick things apart. So what I'm saying to you is that a lot of the terms for psychic abilities out there, some of them are regurgitated, retitled things. And some of them are come from a fantastical perspective. Video games, graphic novels, fantasy, films, and all of that. Okay, so we're going to deal with what's realistic, obviously. And when you look at what's there in their raw form, the original abilities, without the hype of the new terms and all that stuff, there are 23 that I noted down in my notebook. 23 after looking at this intense study of it, there's about 23 main abilities. And this brings me to my next point. We live in a world, especially, not the whole world, but especially North American continent. The North American continent's philosophy on medicine is that it is way too specialized. The philosophy is that everything should have its own specialty. And I believe it's way too specialized. For example, mind, body, soul. What you apply to the body, you apply to the mind and you apply to the soul. What do I mean by that? Okay, well, people go through juicing and saunas and salt scrubs and green smoothies and vitamins and detox diets for the body, right? Makes sense. People go through yoga and cardio and mindfulness and all sorts of meditative techniques and therapies and things to heal the mind. Makes sense. When people should go through all kinds of healings and cleanses and spiritual alignments processes for the soul, the spirit. Makes sense. So mind, body, and soul have formulas to them. You gotta tend to that part of your life. You can't live on junk food, not work out, be exposed to all kinds of triggers and toxicity mentally, and not even ignoring your spirituality. That's not healthy. Obviously, you gotta buckle down and do a little something for mind, body, and soul. Okay, well, that balance and that concept means that everything is connected. It really is. If you're stressed out too much, your body's going to show it. If your body is very, very strained because of too much physical work, your mind is also exhausted. And if you're put through too much mental and physical strain, your spirit shows it. So we are connected in every way, mind, body, soul. Because of that, let's take that back into the medicine world. In this country, medicine is too overly specialized. What do I mean by that? Well, you're certainly not going to go to a podiatrist for a pap smear. Hello. I understand there has to be divisions, but and in division comes expertise, which is wonderful, but it's so extremely specialized that a lot of people go misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, and given wrong treatments and medications. Of course, that happens for a plethora of other social, economic, and political, dirty, conniving reasons. But not getting into that drama. You know, if you go to one doctor in North America and they're treating you for the stomach or intestines, and they're not aware of other types of things that you're on, and even if you give them a list of medications and they do blood work, they can still layer on something that maybe another doctor was aware of something you had, and then another one for something else. And in that kind of weird thing, there's gaps, and people get overly medicated. There's not enough of a connection. Where in other countries, the philosophy is different. There's a primary that's able to do a lot more, and then only for specific things, you're sent to a specialist. There's many ways to go about it. There's not one country that's better, but I do see that is a con to all the pros, is being too overly specialized. Granted, we have a wonderful medicine system, but without getting into the politics of it, a lot of people just think the North American formula is the one applied to the whole globe, and that is not the case. In many ways, North America is ahead, and in many ways, they are the one that's behind. So no one is perfect. No one has the answer, but there are some countries that operate medicinally where they are in the lead in many ways that they're thinking. And people do live longer and healthier in some parts of the world, especially the blue zone. But not getting into other topics like that, going back, what does that have to do with psychic ability? How does it tie in? Because we are really looking at terms here. We're going to identify and get deep, deep examples and really get in there, detailed and thoroughly on what these abilities are. It's when you open your mind and you start putting the pieces together and make it a learning journey with anything. Anything that I want to apply myself to adjust. If I want the list from 1 to 10, that's very superficial. I'm gonna research, and I'm gonna take my time, and I'm gonna really learn it. And that's what I'm about. If I wanted to do a short-term content, then I would just do something on TikTok. This is my space to talk about something at length for those that really want to learn. All right, so the reason that everything is tied together, why the medicine concept, it's because when you separate psychic abilities, it doesn't work that way. Well, that is just this term, okay? And you're only using that term. No, they're like this. It's a network, just like the brain, a web of neurons. They're all communicating, and they're like this. And you might have one trigger here and a trigger here, and then these two get stimulated because of these two triggers. And you might have this trigger go off and this trigger go off, and then this section is triggered because of the stimulation. That is the way it works. That being said, understanding that you can fit them into 3 main categories: mediumship, magical practice, divination. And they are monster subcategories we're going to break down. And knowing that you cannot dissect the term falsely. And you also cannot break down everything and have its own ability be its own thing. They all work together. Not at the same time. You can have one be the one that you are using the most, just like your senses. You can be smelling something in the kitchen and looking at the pizza. You're not tasting it though. You're focusing on the scent. When you're eating something, you're not smelling and eating, smelling and eating. You do smell the aroma and it enhances the taste, and you're feeling it with your fingers. But it's very different than if I say, I'm going to feel this rug. It's so soft and velvety. I'm looking at the colors. It's maybe making a little sound. I'm not tasting it because it wouldn't taste good. I'm visually looking at how fluffy it is and the pretty color, but my primary at that moment is the feel of the rug. You have to understand that when you're looking at a film, you're listening to the sounds in the background, but it's not a soundtrack that you're enjoying like an album. You're visually looking at it. So when you are exposed to stimuli, you're not going to have all the 5 senses at the same height every time, because that doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. You can have 2 or 3, but you're going to have a primary one. They're all together. It's an experience, although I'm not tasting that rug, to be honest. So that taste is out. I'm not going to lick that rug. You see, doesn't make sense. I'm not going to listen to the cookies. Are they sizzling? I'm looking at the cookie. I'm listening to it. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to they're all together, but you're going to have 2 or 3 triggered. The other 2, they feel something. Some of them are quiet while the other ones go off. And that network is how psychic abilities work. So that being said, I wrote down the most important ones, and then I'm going to get into some of the weird ones and then some of the bullshit shit that's out there that is very confusing. Let's go on to the next part. Right. So we've gone over a couple of things. We've gone over how mind, body, soul is connected, and how you can't have one ability and not the other one go off. And if you're using one, it can't be the other one. We understand the network, the neurons, the communication, right? We also understand that there's 3 main groups in which abilities show: mediumship, magical practice, and divination. Those are the 3 big groups. We're going to get into why. We also understand that the history of the term, psychic is an umbrella term, and the name game and all of this in modern day is just a bunch of hype. At the end of the day, you're going to understand that it goes back to its root. And we're also going to talk about the abilities, specifically with giving lots of examples. The last part that I want to talk about before we get into the abilities is how does someone become a psychic? I like to use the word sensitive as well. So there's psychic, there's sensitive. Psychic is a term, like I said, it's umbrella and it's used interchangeably. From this point of the video on, I'm going to refer to psychic as mastery level, and I'm going to refer as sensitive as someone who's, not at the psychic level, but definitely more than average. And then spiritual is going to be under that. So it's going to be from lowest to highest in category of skill and ability. I'm going to use the term spiritual, sensitive, and psychic. Spiritual, sensitive, and psychic. We're going to start off. What percentage of the population is psychic? A very small few. where these numbers come from and who oversees the psychic world. So the interesting thing is that the study of abilities, psychic abilities, what they call paranormal phenomenon, because it's more than just psychic abilities, paranormal phenomenons, things that are unexplained, it's called parapsychology. Parapsychology. That is the study of things that are esoteric, occult, supernatural, and so forth. Is it a actual science? It's not a life science. It is a pseudoscience, but it's a pseudoscience that has always fought its way to be heard and respected. Is it respected greatly by the scientific world? No, but it's gained a lot of strength through the centuries. And some countries and some governments value it highly, while others think that it's hogwash. There's always going to be fluctuation. We live in a world as well where a lot of people think if you Google something, you have a master's at it. A lot of people think that they don't need to go to school because they can just Google everything. And a lot of people think that they could just go online and find some online school, and if it says certificate, then they pay a lot of money, then they're pros. No. Universities have to be accredited. There are standards. There are procedures, and there are things that make it have a raised bar of approval in everything that you study. So you don't just go to a law school. What makes it a top-rated law school? And why? Who oversees it? If you're studying business, it's accredited by what? And where are you going? And how does it rank? If you're studying education, is it a top education school? What makes it so? And who oversees that rank? Does everything need a degree? No. Universities are businesses too. Some things, if you're going to cut open a human body, you better be licensed and board certified. If you're going to build a home and the building can collapse, damn right, you better be licensed and certified and left and right through every bell and whistle you need to accomplish. If you're going to be teaching children, absolutely you need to have everything, straight ace. There are things in life when you are overseeing safety and procedural things for humans, you need to be by the book, and you can't just get some little degree somewhere that's not accredited, some hogwash place. Does everything need a degree? Hell no. We live in a world where they try to pump that out as some Joe Schmo cult freako weirdo decides to open up a school and call it, oh my God, it's school of this and school of your tarot school. Oh my God. And no, I'm sorry. You're not gonna, no, There's something as bloodlines and lineage and culture and things that are passed down. And you're not gonna sit there, opening up a business that's fake, telling me that I need a certificate in this when, who the hell are you? But we live in that world where uneducated people, they mix, if it says certificate and it came in the mail and it's a lot of money, it must be special. No. How about no? No. You don't need to go to art school to be a top artist. Most top artists that have made it today are self-taught. You're born creative. You can go to the top art school in the world and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to be an oil painter. And if you have no talent, you suck. You gonna suck no matter what. If you need to go to school to be a magical practitioner, no. No. Maybe no. In some fantasy world, maybe. We live in a world where lots of people are coming up with a business and making it fancy. I want a school. No, that's not the way it works. You do not have, who has the right to say you are psychic or not? You either have the ability or you don't, but you can't learn it in school. And we're going to get into that. Can you learn it when you have an awakening? What is an awakening? Can someone that's an adult go through some of those things? Can you, you have to just be born that way? Da-da-da-da-da. How does it work? We're going to get into that. So again, who oversees the psychic world? Well, in this country, that's done by country. In this country, there is the parent, something like that. They have a weird acronym. And they're pretty interesting. They've been around for a very long time, and they've done some very cool studies. I've read some of their journals, and they work with, these parapsychologists are always pushing the edge for research and things they've proven. I think they've done a magnificent amount of work, and outstanding. But again, it's not the kind of thing you're not a magical herbalist if you don't have a little certification from my shitty little school. Okay. You're not really a tarot reader if you don't get certified by American tarot people, because we're like the shit. Yeah, right. That came up with little fucking schools and you want to charge money. At the end of the day, if you read for hundreds of people or thousands of people and they find value in your readings and they come back and they lived what you said to them and they are, improving their life because you're guiding them, you don't need a little dweeb ass little tarot school giving you some little fucking piece of paper and a little fucking sticker saying you're a tarot reader. Really? Come on. Seriously. Right. And you're like a surgeon, right? Like a brain surgeon? Sure. Okay. Please. So the same thing with psychics. There are these wonderful places. Oh, if you're top rated and you're, oh my God, you have a TV in your face and you're so famous, oh my God, you're so real. Right. At the end of the day, can you randomly speak to strangers and help them out and do the things that you need to do and use your abilities? Because it's about serving the masses. That's what it's about. Walk your talk and prove it. Who does that? The people that you interact with, the people that you help. Not some little book or some little camera shit or some little famous shit. No, it's the real evidence. That's what it's called, evidence. And that's what makes it real. So again, I just wanted to throw that in there because we live in a world with certificates and school and oh my God, degrees and everything's so special. And oh my God, I paid so much money and I'm a part of this society and I'm so cool. How about that? Okay, walk the talk. Show me that you're really cool. Okay. You can't put a price tag on something that is natural born or something that if you have a magical bloodline. So someone who decides to pay thousands of dollars to this little school somewhere to practice magic, but that they come from 16 generations of magical practitioners. Give me a freaking break, people. Come on. My folk medicine great grandma knew more than. Okay. Anyway, now let's go on to the next part. What about, I made a little chart here, ugly little chart. You're going to love it. My little screwball diddles. How do you measure psychic ability? Okay. Let's start off with the beginning. So where am I getting this information from? Again, this is not one of those things that you have a textbook or anything, but you can research it. So because I've taken a lot of anthropological courses in college, it's not my major. I'm not pretending that anthropology is my major. No, I chose something else. But I did do a lot of studies in anthropology. It was an interest of mine. I've always read on different religions and cultures, and especially magical religions. Very interesting to me. But you'll study, if you research the history of spirituality, the origin of spirituality, you will find that spirituality became known to man by dreams, by having dreams at night or when they sleep. It doesn't have to be night. That was the beginning of mankind knowing there was something beyond. So if you're an atheist watching this, go do something else, really. But anyone that has faith in something greater than themselves, something spiritual, any kind of faith, then you can stay, because this is for those that have a spiritual connection to something that they believe in, when you think about it, let's start off by answering the question: who's psychic? How do you know? What's a sensitive? What's a sensitive? What is a spiritual person? What is all of that? Let's start with the meter. This is a meter. My little cheapy little meter here I made with permanent marker. So we've got 1 to 12. I'll explain this in a minute. Understand this if this looks strange to you. Spirituality is a spectrum. What is a spectrum? It's a term used most importantly in a mathematics called probability and statistics, where you study ratio and proportion and you measure things, not like in centimeters or miles or kilometers, but you measure things against each other in a ratio, right? So the spectrum is where it's a broad range. In other words, there's no defined this or this. It is a spectrum. It's a broad range. So spirituality is on a spectrum. Now, no one is at 0, because that's either death or brain dead, or they didn't make it to be a human being. If you're, maybe a zygote, I don't know. But like, if you're a human on this earth, from 1 to 12, this is the range. No human being is at 0. So everyone is born with abilities. Everybody. Every single human being on this earth. Most of the population is from 1 to 4. From 1 to 4. So what is 1 to 4? I call that, this is my term, but do the research yourself. There's no term out there that's perfect. No one wrote the handbook on it. If not, I would be quoting it and I would be researching it. Like I will add research in this video and sources. But again, this is not that kind of video because again, like I said, there's no one organization that has scientifically studied clairvoyancy, psychic ability, anything like that. There have been certain associations. I mentioned the biggest one, the Parapsychology Association of America. That's one of them. There are many universities, and they've conducted studies at Duke University, which, I've read quite a lot of studies in their journal. Very good journal if you want to check it out. Then there's an association for psychics that are only talented in one ability. I'll mention that as well if you want to look them up as well. There's a lot of universities that have a parapsychology division in the university, and they conduct studies, and they even work with some of the psych students too. Kind of neat. There are universities that are studying, maybe it's dream science. I know that can get into some interesting things as well. There's a lot of different scientists amongst different universities and different types of sciences that sometimes get into the occultish, supernatural stuff, but they don't focus on it. Sometimes there's let's say that there's psychologists that are studying dreams, and there's they're the psychology of dreaming, and sometimes they can experience something very strange, like for example Dr. Brian Weiss, who was a hypnotherapist. He had an official MD, I think. I don't know his history. You'd have to research it. Then he did hypnotherapy, and then from there his life changed when he all of a sudden bumped into experience with a client, and then and he got into past lives, and it began an odyssey in his life, and he wrote an amazing book called Many Lives, Many Masters on past life regression, through therapy, through hypnotherapy. So again, sometimes there's been a scientist or two or three or even holistic type of scientists that end up, conducting one service to a group of people, and then all of a sudden their life changes because they come across something mystical, and they end up, their life is full of a lot of things, but, interesting stories. But sometimes there's like university research and they're conducting something on lab rats, or something with kids, or something with humans, or a specific type of people that have been through something. And then all of a sudden, some of the research can give them some really interesting findings that go into the creepy or the mysterious, as they say. And sometimes that happens as well. But as far as like a specific group that focuses on this type of study, I would say it's parapsychologists. Really, that's why I mentioned that association, okay? They're in the hierarchy of that, I guess they would be the epitome of it. But again, no one really, there's no like one ruling voice over the matter at all. All right. Okay. So now, in other words, if someone's born a psychic, there's no one that can either label them or not label them. I guess if they're labeled that way by one of that organization, that would be great, but it doesn't mean they are or they're not, is what I'm trying to say, because it's not like a teacher can't sit in a classroom without a license, obviously, and a surgeon can't go ahead and perform what they have to do if they're not board certified, like completely and in good standing. So that's what I'm trying to say to you, that there's this kind of very open and flexible kind of thing, just like with astrology. So, okay, so you see this spectrum here, and this comes from my research that I've done, but again, you can do yours. All right, so 1 to 4 is the majority of the population, which is very healthy. 1 to 4. So what does that include? It includes that one person throughout their life will probably encounter 5 or 6 psychic experiences. The first one is a dream. Every human can tell you at one point in their life that they had a dream and it came true. Yeah, it's called being human. It's a normal thing. They are cool and mystified by it. Oh my God, I had this dream and it came true. Yeah, you're human. You have abilities. Yep. You were born with them. You can smell, you can see, you can taste, you can hear. Yes, you can feel. Yep, you can dream. And sometimes it's to alert you. Another one is maybe they felt something was going to happen to a family member and they told the family member. That's also very, very human. Having a gut feeling at some point in their life, and it led them to the right thing. And they felt like, whoa, it was this spiritual experience they had. Yeah, it's called being spiritual. Everyone is spiritual. So dreams are the first thing that allowed mankind, if you study the origin of spirituality in man, you will find that in that Genesis, you will find that dreams are what led people to believe that, to understand there's more on the beyond. It led them to understand that there's a God, and so forth, was dreams, which is ironic because sometimes certain faiths mention dreams as something that's taboo, but in reality, that's what made humans believe and know that there was so much more. So everyone is capable of dreams. So what happens in 1 to 4? What happens in 1 to 4, some people live at a level 4, and that's all they do, is they live at a level 4. Which is a person that is very comfortable with understanding that they have had spiritual experiences where you can't explain it, and they feel enlightened by it. A 3 are those that want this to happen, but they've only had a few. 2, they're not sure, but they have had a few experiences, and 1 have had a few experiences, but maybe they toss it off to logic or something like that, or coincidence, as they say. So this is most of the population. This is why I made this curvy line here to show you this group. This is 1 to 4, and this is normal. So if you've had weird experiences, things that you can't explain, dreams that have foretold dangers of family members, or weird feelings that you've had, gut feelings you've had, that's called being spiritual, and that is most of the population. Very normal. You would not be normal if you didn't experience those things. Let's go to 5, 6, and 7, which is a weird group here. 5, 6, and 7 are people that are, they're not spiritual anymore. They are sensitive. They are sensitive. They are aware that they've had those interesting experiences. They're aware of it. But they also want more of it. They feel drawn to tarot readings, or drawn to crystals, or drawn to special things, and they believe in that stuff. They love it. They thrive on it. And level 5 just came from this group, so they're just like, the interest is piqued, but they don't understand it. And they've had more experiences than this group. 6 is where you're having even more experiences, but you're starting to learn about it. And 6 and 7 is where something that's called adult awakening. Sounds really weird. Some people just call it awakening. An awakening is when you've been spiritual a lot of your life and you know there's more and you feel more than this group. But the confusion is when this group, the goal of it is mistaken for these two groups. And that's what frustrates people. It leads them to be scammed. It leads them to waste money and get frustrated, and sometimes even fried in some way emotionally, because it's draining. So the important thing here is that this is a journey, and when you have an expectation, that's the problem. This group was born, and this group, I'm going to tell you what makes this group. Very unique situation to be 8 and 9. 10, 11, 12 is naturally born. Can this group ever be here or here? It would be very strange that they would be here, but they will never be here. And that's okay. That's like saying there's a person that was born with an ability for languages, and they learn 5 or 6 languages in high school. Does that mean an adult cannot learn a few languages? That's not true. An adult can learn languages. It's been proven. Most military has to be trilingual or even polyglots in some high-ranking positions. The human brain is amazing. Everyone can learn. Some people have a facility for languages. Can you learn to sing later? Yeah, a celebrity just proved it. They did a film recently on the life of an opera singer, and they had been a singer their entire life with a certain type of vocal range, and they didn't know it. There's been adults that start to sing out of nowhere, or adults that start doing sports, and all of a sudden they are discovered and go pro. Very rare, but it can happen. Can this group ever be this group? No. I would say that a person in this group can be very, very unique and special, but it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't, you'll understand that when I explain why, then you'll understand why that doesn't happen. So what is group 5, 6, and 7? So these are sensitive people. They see themselves as understanding a heck of a lot, where group 1 through 4, they don't know. They just know they've had their own experience, and that's it. 5, 6, and 7 is an awareness. Oh, this is about this. This is about this. They learn it. They read it. They try to study it. And they have adult awakenings. 6 and 7, not 5, but 6 and 7 have adult awakenings. And this is when they start to do something that feels to them like they're going to end up being in this group. That's where the mistake happens. You have to love the journey you're on, and you have to fit it to you. A child that's a polyglot by the age of 10, an adult that can learn 3 languages and be very good at it, they're not going to be the polyglot that the child is. Just like with music, with math ability, there's a difference between a prodigy. There's a difference between someone who's highly gifted and someone who applies themselves very well. So it doesn't. This is where this is where the mistake happens. Where if you just take your own journey and you elevate yourself where you're at, then there's no pressure, and you're going to see that you enjoy your journey higher than setting an expectation that makes zero sense. Okay, so I would say that these are the adult awakenings, is 6 and 7, where they learn by a psychic that is natural born. That's usually what happens. Now, we're going to, because these people need guidance in the awareness, in their awakening. If you need guidance in your awakening, that's not natural born. Natural born is when it comes from the spirits, when it comes from the self. That's the difference. And you can't say that it's the same. All right, but it is real. The awakening is very real and very valid and very important. All right. I would say that people in 6 and 7 end up helping some people outside their community and greatly their family. Now, and they're the special ones of the family, 6 and 7. What happens with 8 and 9? 8 and 9 is a unique group. They are people that are spiritual and have had an awakening without them wanting it because of a near-death experience. That's the only thing that can open that door so synthetically. And the way they have their abilities is not the same as natural born. There's something off. They're either going to be overwhelmed by it. It's going to traumatize them in some way. Or they're going to be using these abilities in probably 1 or 2 ways, and that's it. And they're going to do it very, very well, kind of like on autopilot. And these are the only ones that it's wired differently. Their network communication like that maybe is like this, and it's always going off, and they don't have the whole puzzle. And it's because this is because the only thing to get to 8 to 9 is near death. And that's a very strange group. But it's nonetheless, they have shed a great deal of light on, on the situation, on spirituality. But they themselves have a very hard time with it. And sometimes they go to natural born to go, help them through the process. Okay. And a lot of time they can associate with this group as well. The problem is when this group gets led by this group, and that can also lead to a lot of stress. All right. And then we have 10, 11, and 12 being the range of natural born, where it happens as a baby from the time they can speak. Anywhere from the time they speak to about 12 is when this can occur, the age of 12. So from speaking age, some babies speak at 1, 1.5. That's on the rare side, but anyway, from there to about 12, this would be the natural born, and they lead. And they're the ones that are aware of all the abilities, and it's not taught. They don't learn it from anyone at all. No books, nothing like that. And they have a mission in life. That's why it's different. These people do not have a mission. These people are chosen. These people are chosen no matter what to serve a purpose for the masses. These people some are chosen, and some it was that, or it was a way to have their life saved. It's a very mysterious reason why. There's 2 or 3, 4 reasons why, and that's how you break down the spirituality spectrum. So you have to. Can this group ever get to here? Yes, a 4 can get to a 5. Are 5, 6, and 7 ever this? They are, but they have a destiny where they're meant to be here. Can a 7 get to an 8? I already explained that this is through trauma. Can this group ever get to here? No, I already explained that the wiring is different. It'll never be the same. A person that's born dyslexic, they have to correct that. And then they can read like normal. But you can't take away their history of the dyslexia, right? So it's one of those things, the brain, the mind. So again, That's an analogy that I'd rather not use because, again, I'm not getting into the anatomical, neurological. That's not my field, and I don't pretend for it to be. But for lack of another analogy, I just use that one. But I'd rather steer away from medical things because, again, that's a different specialty, a different world. And I'm coming from the other world, which is all spiritual and, paranormal. That's, my forte. All right. So here we go. And this is the group. Now you can break this down. What would be the 10, 11, and 12? 12 being mystical seers. 10 being highly focused in maybe just a very, very, very high level medium. 11 being maybe a very, very skilled diviner, and 12 being both. So I would be considered a 12 proven. All right. And that's why I'm making this video, because I want to help others elevate to the highest level that is possible. And I want this video as a reference. All right, let's get into those abilities now. So one thing I want to be very, very, very specific with in this video is that I'm not going over how to use the ability, how to control it, how to develop it. This is not a how-to. This is a what is. So I'm going to identify the ability. I will get into coaching and skill set videos on how to use, how to ignite, how to use the skill, how to develop, how to sharpen in courses and coaching, which is part of what I do. But in this one, it's just the identification. So here goes. I wrote a list of the 23 most important psychic abilities. I already explained that this really is going to be shoved into 3 categories. I'll do it at the end of the video. Now I'm just going to be darting through them. Ability 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to be doing it like that with examples. This is not in any particular order. They are done randomly. Not in order of importance. They're not in alphabetical order. They're not in any kind of order. I just jotted them down from memory as I was making notes for the course, the video. The first one is going to be telepathy. Telepathy. So tele, like telephone, and pathy, like a path. Listening path. So telepathy is being able to call someone with your mind. So if you start envisioning a Marvel Comics or video games or Hollywood movies, you're probably going to get a really weird vision of it. You're going to probably mentally picture something really off and crazy like and stuff. But we're not getting into the whole unicorn fantasy world. We're doing this realistically, what it really looks like. So telepathy, when you are centered and very aligned, there's a time, if you have this ability. So 8 and 9 wouldn't have it, but 10, 11, and 12 would. 5, 6, and 7 may experience one of these. The problem is that they will not, 5, 6, and 7 will not get all of the ones I'm talking about. That's what would be 10, 11, and 12, mainly 12. 12 is going to be the one that has all of these. 10 and 11 is going to share a large bunch. 5 and 6 may experience one of these, and at a very, very small scale. And but it's way more than most of the population, 1 through 4. And 8 and 9 are going to have one that is very, very sharp that they can use with a second or third, but they don't know to do more with it. And they are stuck in that one connection, and that's what they do in a loop, okay? All right, so like I said, first one is telepathy. So there's 2 ways of doing something. The first one is, there's 2 ways that telepathy can play out. The first one is when you are calling someone in your mind. So if you try calling someone in your mind and you're thinking about them and thinking about them and thinking about them and thinking about them and thinking about them, and within a few hours they communicate with you, or maybe the next day, that is telepathy. You can do it within the hour and have someone call you and focus and focus and focus and focus and focus. Telepathy is not manifesting. If you think it's manifesting, you're very confused, because it's not. Manifesting is a wish that you align your high energy with, your higher self with, and you spiritually connect to a goal that you want to accomplish. And if you believe it, it almost becomes mind over matter. That's you pushing the energy. That's your mind and your logic pushing your energy of your higher self to accomplish something and direct yourself to it. That's different. In a way, that's self-telepathy, but with a goal. All joke aside, telepathy, though, as an ability, is very different. It's when you know that you can force that person to walk through the door, or force that person to think something. Not think something like control their mind, but influence them to contact you, or to show up, or for you to see them. It's like calling that person's energy. It's like your soul is calling their soul, like an energy, like show up, show up, show up, show up. That's pretty much how you can picture it. How this plays out, how it feels, how you can like go ahead and like make it, tune in and make that call. That would be another video where I explain how it's done. But in this one, it's just identifying it, like I said before. The other way to use telepathy is if a person is in the room with you or on the phone, and you are mentally sending them information over and over and over and over, and they end up saying what you thought. You're transmitting the thought to them, the information. That is also how you use telepathy. So telepathy is both. Let's go on to the next one. Precognition. Precognition is the ability to foretell the future. Don't get it confused with prophecy, which we will go over later. Precognition is before it happens. So fortune tellers, readers, psychic readers, whatever you want to call it, people that foretell the future. Remember I said that these can be broken down in 3 main categories. I'll do that at the end. So precognition starts off very light. A person has a dream and the next day the dream comes true. The person does a reading to someone and they can only go 1 day ahead, an hour ahead. Some people can only foretell 3 days or a week. Whereas a level 12 mystic seer will be able to foretell probably 15 years into the future, something like that. 15 years, 10 years, some numerical value like that. Humans are not gods, There's a cap on the limit, but the more exceptional, the further into the future, the more time the person has. A good, solid level 12 is going to be able to foretell 15 years, something like that. Maybe a little over, but when you get a reading, a very powerful psychic is not going to be able to just tell you the 20-year mark or the 15-year mark unless you're looking for something that's current. If you're looking for what good is a reading if it's that many years ahead, you have to also control it. Okay, so you also have to kind of have a time frame that's healthy as well for the client. So that's very important to adapt, control, navigate, and that again is how to use these abilities. And we're not getting into that in this video, but anyway, the ability of precognition is future. Because it's so related to prophecy, let's get into that. It's also very, very similar to premonition, another ability. So we're gonna skip ahead and go over prophecy. And prophecy is when a person has a moment in the reading process, if they are divining, or reading if they're in a mediumship, or reading if they're, any kind of like forecasting or anything like that. When a premonition is felt, which is a vision, it's a very, very specific ability. Precognition is needed for premonition, because a premonition is a vision of the future, but it kind of looks like a little movie. When the movie comes to the person and they're able to describe it, that is precognition. But precognition you're supposed to be able to wind down the details in the story, which is a practice done in divination. So it's different. When a premonition is divinatory, but it's also spur of the moment. It's basically a dream when you are awake. So my first psychic experience, no, I can't say that because I was a necromancer before anything. But I would say that one of my first ones as a kid where I realized that I was, because the adults around me already knew, but when I started really feeling that I had, I was a very little child, 5 or 6, and I remember that I had premonitions. Yeah. So that was, and it was very weird to me at first, but I learned what it was. So premonition is like a little mini movie, and it describes exactly what is going to happen. And when you sharpen your skills and you get older, a premonition will take longer time to play out, so the person has more time. That's important. The closer, if the warning is too close to when it happens, the skill is not developed enough, because then the person has very little time. The more you get away from the more time a person has between the warning, the higher the skill, so that the person can prepare. All right. Okay. So premonition is very important. So let's call it like a mini movie, a vision when you're awake. If you have a premonition when you're sleeping, it's a dream. A foretelling dream. Not all dreams are foretelling. That's a whole other thing. Dream analysis is something that I do a lot on my stream through my clients, because it's a learning curve to understand what dreams are bad digestion versus stress, the psychological part of the body, the brain repairing itself, and what is real spiritual message, and why, and what kind. Okay, so the next one would be prophecy. So prophecy is when a person is either having a premonition and then is able to put the concepts together and give a warning in like a reading, so it's more complex, or it's done during something divinatory and they're able to predict things like a story with great detail that the person can recognize. And prophecy is very important. This is going to happen like this, and you have to be like this and be aware of it. That's a prediction. That is a prophecy. Okay, and that of course comes in with divination. All right, so that would be 10, 11, and 12 would be for that level. Let's go on to, let me mark off, I did telepathy. So I got telepathy. We went over precognition, and I went over prophecy. So I did those 3, and also premonition as well. I have to find premonition on this list. Okay, that's it. So now the next one is going to be retrocognition. So retrocognition is being able to read on the past. So where's the current in all of this? Well, the current, if you do a reading and it pinpoints to the current time frame of what's going on at that moment. That's good because that means that you are tapping in, which is great. Most people that read that are maybe like a 6 or 7, they're learning to read tarot or some other form of divination, and they tap in. That's a really good sign, because really, you could do really good readings at a 6, 7, especially 7. So 7 would be someone who is gifted, they're sensitive, and they could be very good readers. But you really have to get out of the present though, you know, and it takes, you know, years of study. All right. You have to learn the difference between, well, instead of getting into the breakdown, let's go on to the next one. So, retrocognition is reading the past. The most important part of it is the further back you go, the more power your skill. So if you can go back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 50 years, 100 years, etc., longer than that, 200 years, 300 years, you know, whatever, that kind of phenomenon with exceptional detail, uncovering what happened, how, and all of that. So retrocognition, very, very important, especially high-level psychics, 10, 11, 12, that work forensics, for example. Very needed at that point, very needed. 8 and 9 have a very difficult time. 8 and 9, psychics have a very, very difficult time with retrocognition. They only see something very specific, like a very small little space of time, like maybe how a person died, or like who injured them, or something like that in the past. They see just a little piece and that's it. So retrocognition is one of the hardest abilities to have. I would say probably the second hardest, first or second hardest. It's one of the top 2. And it's very, very difficult. So yeah, so this would be my strongest talent, is retrocognition. But that doesn't mean that I don't have precognition, obviously, because to have retrocognition, you have to have precognition, and you have to have very, very strong precognition. All I'm just saying is that I'm able to go exceptionally into the future, above average, but my going back is beyond that, like very, very, very high level going back with detail. All right, so so that's my strongest talent. Does that mean that all of them have to be a high level? Everybody has levels at different things. We'll talk about the rank. Some of mine are above average, and some are at average, and some I'm getting used to them. I don't use them as much, and it's something where you always have to practice and you always have to get good at it. We're always evolving. So retrocognition, very important, because to know the future is very good, but if you don't really understand the past, you're not going to be able to do your job. Learning the current is important, but you only need a little touch for the current. So if a person is getting a new job and you say, "Oh, you're getting a new job?" Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's really good. But what got you there? And then what are you going to be able to accomplish in the future? And what are the warnings and what are the things? And a lot you can learn from the past. So I'll talk in another video about how much I'm able to go into the future, and how far I'm able to go into the past. And I will give you examples and stories and interesting things like that. And maybe we can compare, maybe you do too. And we can really compare things and, learn from each other, right? Because that's what it's about. It's a community. So the next one I have on here is mediumship. Mediumship, I am a spirit medium, so there's different kinds. There's lots of different kinds of mediums. Mediumship is very misunderstood, extremely misunderstood. Let's start off by defining it. Why is it its own subgroup? Mediumship is when you can talk to the dead. Necromancy is the ability to talk to the dead, but it has the stigma to it that is steeped in dark sorcery. And while that may be true in some instances, it's actually closed-minded. Real, true talent, comes from necromancy when it comes to mediumship. So there's a difference between necromancy and channeling. And a medium, some mediums only do channeling. Some mediums do necromancy and channeling, like me. Now there are trance mediums, physical mediums, and then there's lots of other kinds of mediums. In fact, there's hundreds of them. Medium is so complicated that I want to do a video on it only, or even if I don't have a chance to do a video on it, I'm going to go on my Discord in my magical library in the lamaisonjuju forum, and I will be posting articles on it. 'Cause sometimes I watch supernatural movies and I kind of review them. Like there was a movie that I went over on mediumship, and I wrote a review on it, and we're doing another one on different things from magical practice to divination to different things like that, where I watch the film and I break down what's real, what's Hollywood hype, and I identify the abilities in the films, which I think is fun. All right, so mediumship is talking to the deceased. So what is the difference? Okay, when you grab a deck of cards, any deck of cards, it's I read over 64 forms of divination. Cards are one of the many. This is cartomancy, or how to tell the future with cards, cartomancy. When you take this, any deck, and you are doing a spread for a client, you are reading for them, you are communicating with your own spirit guides. So getting into how many there are and what rank they have and how that works, that's a whole other thing. A whole other subgroup. It's called spirit guides, and we can get into that kind of thing. I coach on that. I help people discover who they are and communicate and open their third eye, and I help push awakenings and things on folks to help them out. I spent my entire life growing up, born in the family business, family magical culture. We've always done seances, and I used to remove hauntings and all of that. So I can talk a great deal about mediumship. So mediumship is speaking to deceased loved ones. That is, most mediums, they communicate or channel to decode and share with the person that has lost a loved one what the loved one is saying, any relative, and they help give peace, tranquility, and sometimes what I've done as well is I have helped spirits cross over, or I will coach the client to help them have that spirit have rest. And there are lots of different things that can trouble spirits, lots of different places they can be stuck in. It's a whole other world out there. So mediums usually, they communicate with deceased loved ones. And also other spirits, and then from there it gets complicated. So when you're doing divination, you communicate with either your entities that you work with or your own spirit guides, and that is a difference. Can mediums talk to their own spirit guide? Yes, they can, but that's mostly a psychic thing, which again, the blanket term, but I told you how I'm using it in this video, kind of to distinguish. Mediums, usually it's the deceased loved one or the client's spirit guides. That would be more a mediumship. But again, as I explained in the beginning of the video as well, we live in a world where everything has to be so precise and cut to one meaning. And I explained that these are so intertwined that it's that little neuron synapses, click, 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 and then some get warmed up. So it is all interwoven like a braid, okay? So there are things that you just can't shut out the experience. Like I gave the example of all the other senses. When to taste, you have to kind of smell, even though you're not smelling it, but if you have a cold and your scent of smell is off, you can't taste, and so on. So that's why the psychic abilities are like that as well sometimes, okay? So mediumship has channeling and also necromancy, and that's a whole other ball game, speaking to the dead. All right, the next one is going to be dermo-optical perception, and that gets very confused, I have found, with one of the clairs, which is I'm gonna go over all the clairs, but I just wanted to explain that it's very confused. Let's go over dermo-optical perception. So when a person is touched on their skin, or their arm or something like that, or even their face or their back, anything in their skin, they can feel sensations and kind of give a read that way. So a person might brush their skin by accident somewhere, going up a ladder or escalator or something at a shopping center, and the person ignited by that touch might be able to say, hey, look, I saw this happen, or be careful, or something. It can bring it on like a trigger. It can evoke all kinds of past and present and future senses, or you can give a very deep read on a person. Kind of interesting what it evokes, but that is an ability. All right. So like I said before, I wrote down a little to remind me, I wrote down a note that when it comes to dermo, like the skin, dermo, so dermo-optical perception, so seeing with skin, it's very confused sometimes with a form of ESP called psychometry. So for those that are used to the way that I read runes or even cards, mainly being a runist, if those have been with me for years, following my work, they'll see that I will touch the runes, and the one that is meant to speak will tingle, and I will draw it down, and that's how I can tell. Sometimes I do different techniques with the runes when I'm in a hurry and stuff. But in other words, when I'm doing cards, I will, like shuffle the deck in different ways, and then I will feel the card with my fingertips, and it's the one that burns or tingles. Now, you don't always have to feel a burning or sensation. You can feel different things. You can feel like a warmth, or maybe something scratchy, or maybe it's this magnetic pull. Everybody has a different experience, but that I have positive ESP, and I also have psychometry perception ability. So that is something that it's so let's to not confuse it. Dermo-optical perception is very confused with one of the clairs, but also with psychometry. So in the abilities, I would say that there's going to be two big groups. Not that you can divide all abilities under two groups, but out of the whole list of things, there's some of them that shove into these bulleted points with a drop-down menu, right? Because there's a lot. So that's going to be your ESP group and your kinesis groups. So a lot of the kinesises, if that's even a word, kinesises, and the ESP, which is the extrasensory perception skills, because ESP has many skills, telekinesis being one of them, psychometry being another, but it is its own separate ability. So ESP, extrasensory perception, can be played out in many different ways, where it's again a blanket term. Extra, meaning it's an extra one of the senses. So out of the human 5 senses, it's extra. So it's from the third eye, it's extra. Sensory, so it's another way to sense or feel. Perception, something that's feeding you data that is more than what the norm would know. All right, so there's different ways that's played out. Sometimes it's the skin, sometimes it's certain triggers. And in my case, I have it in my hands. Is where it's very prominent. Most people that have ESP psychometry, have it in their hands. It doesn't only have to be in the hands, but it's mostly in the hands, on top, on the inside part, the palm side is where I have it very strongly. All right, so yeah, so dermo-optical perception, and we went over also ESP, and we went over psychometry. Okay, the next one on the list is remote viewing. So remote viewing is played out in different ways, but mainly it's where a psychic, this is probably one of the most impressive psychic abilities that creep people out when I do it. And of course, anybody else that has, you know, this ability, it's kooky, it's very, very interesting. But it's one that you really have to be very centered and in the zone to do it. When I go over how to do some of these things, we'll get into brainwaves and what I mean by centering triggers, okay? Because that's how to do it in this video. It's what they are. So one of them is one of the ways you can, you know, use remote viewing. There was a show a couple of years ago. There was like this challenge thing, and they buried a bunch of people underground. I forgot the name. And one of them, I mean, they were safe and everything, you know, with camera folks and all that stuff. But just to give you an example, let's say that they were in this like wooden box that was like underground, buried just temporarily for like an hour. And the psychics had to go around in a circle, and the one that would find this in this open field unmarked, which one had the human in the box, and when they were standing, the psychic that would find it and stand above it had remote viewing. So so another way to use it is, let's say when a person plays like Zener cards and they shuffle and they take someone, you know, there's no way to see what's on the other side. You can only see the person doing it to the psychic. The psychic can only see the backside with no light or anything hinting in it, and they're shuffled very much. And they'll hold up the symbol, and the psychic has to see through the card. So that's remote viewing. Or let's say a good example is, like one day I was doing a reading. I like to give examples in the how-to video, but I'm just going to do a quick one. I'm doing a reading, and a person was looking for something, and I let them know what bag, where it was, and what it looked like. You know, again, remote viewing. So you can kind of detach your perception. There's 3 different ways this can occur. That's why I don't want to confuse the video on how this can happen, but the mechanics of it, but the science behind it. But essentially, it's when you can, you know, detect where something's hidden, or you can kind of get, you know, go and tell someone what a location looks like to see if you. So when I scry a lot, scrying will very, very useful for remote viewing. You know, you're able to see physical things, looking, you know, and you can find and describe and things like that. So remote viewing is a monster. It's a very, very, very interesting skill, but very, very useful in psychic work. But yeah, it's lots to say about remote viewing. The next one is going to be very confusing, and a lot of them confuse it with the one right after that one. So the next one is called astral projection. Astral projection can be done asleep, and it can be done awake, mostly awake. And it's when the person kind of has their soul travel to look at something and come back. It's a bit dangerous, and I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing. I'll do a video on it and how I use it and everything. You can use it to time travel being a separate ability, but it stems from astral projection. So if you can time travel, you have to astral project, but astral project is not exactly going back in time necessarily. It's really about the current time, astral projection. It's not a future thing. If they tell you it's a future thing, they're full of crap. It is not a future thing. You can get maybe like 0.2% of future astral, but it's really present. It's to help you in the present time, and to go back as well. All right, don't confuse that with retrocognition. Not the same thing, even though you're taking data from the past to use, but it's different. It's astral projection will be in one of the main categories, which would be mediumship, whereas retrocognition is going to be divinatory, a different group in the three that I mentioned in the beginning. The next one is OBE. So this is outer body experience. It's when your soul leaves your body, and you see yourself outside of your body. Very, very scary for some, and you can even see different things going on. Again, it's current. It's not something that you don't OBE for the future and you don't OBE for the past. That's not true. It's current. But the difference between OBE, outer body experience, and astral projection is that astral projection is supposed to be done at will. OBE is not. Big difference. And what brings it on and how it works, I'll get into it in a future video. Moving on to the next group. We went over prophecy already, but I'm going to go over healing energy medicine. So healing energy medicine is another cluster. I mentioned that there's the kinesis group, there's the ESP group, but I forgot that there's also a healing group. Healers are very particular. There are people that, like Edward Casey, for example. He was a very famous psychic, and he was mainly a healer. You know, that was his groove. And you know, like again, we can go on and on about him and a bunch of other people that I would mention in history. But roughly, it's just that you know, healers, you know, their only one talent and focus is so specific, but it's life-changing. So it can be a person that and you know, they have this ability to heal the body, not entirely, but maybe like help out, maybe help diagnose a person so that the person gets it looked at. Their focus spiritually is to help people with their health. That's pretty much it. Just like pet specialists work on pets, and you know, that's when you get into specialties. Everybody's got a specialty. Jack of all trades, master of none. You always have to master. There's always one main thing that you really good at. When you take all your abilities, they're usually amplified to do one or two paths, and we'll get into that in the future on another video as well. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments if you want me to make that video. So the next one is going to be witnessing. So witnessing is very strong. This, for example, would be categorized under the magical practice category that I mentioned in the beginning. Witnessing is important. It's when you have a spiritual and psychic moment with a visitor, whether it's a spirit entity or deity that you work with. And mainly it's when magical things are involved, a magical step, a magical process. It's not really something that's for divination, and not really something that's for, not really, I mean, it could, but not really, and not really for mediumship. But then again, that network, those neurons, you know, you can never get one away from the other, really, truly cut and snap it. It's always woven. But yes, I would say it goes under the third category. So witnessing, again, is the visiting from having that moment, that connection with the one spirit or the one entity or the one deity in what you're doing. But it is an ability. It is definitely an ability. The next one is time travel, which is a sub spin-off of astral projection, and that is done during divination. So that is done for pre or retro cognition. It is a technique. So you have to do it as an appendage of the cogs. All right. So the next one is teleportation. And that one on its own is, so teleportation is probably going to be the weirdest ability to explain, because in a Hollywood sense, it means that you can take one object, let's say it's this deck of cards, and I can, in my mind, move them for them to appear in someone else's house. That's crazy. That's just not possible. No, we're not gods. We're not new. This is not like, some kind of fantasy Hollywood movie. But I'll tell you, if we're dealing with magic, there are things that can play tricks on people's minds, and you can manipulate what that person will see. And it's kind of like glamour magic, but not exactly. It's just the concept of it. We'll get into that in the future. But teleportation is really when you want to kind of, with your own psychic abilities, push and push and push the person in that scenario. It's almost like you're having a spiritual influence on their behavior. That is realistic teleportation, mixed with telepathy in there as well. But the only thing is, telepathy is just calling the person so they can contact you or for you to see them. Whereas, teleportation is when you're sending info for them to respond. And that would be the difference. The next one is telekinesis, and that's moving things with your mind. So there's like always trends in videos that you play with a piece of foil and all of that. But that's not exactly how it works. You can practice it if you have the ability. If you can't strengthen what you don't have. But it is something that you can just focus on something and move it and move it and move it. And I'll explain what that's all about in the future. Some people have very high levels of telekinesis, and some have very low. But it's not going to be like the movie Carrie or anything crazy like that, because that's Hollywood, and that's just doesn't make sense. And it's I'll explain why that happens, what makes it happen, and how to strengthen the skill. But telekinesis is very cool. They've made a lot of movies about it because, imagine someone being able to move something with their mind. It does work, but it's very specific and, again, very particular. Why to use it, how to use it, and what it's for. All right. So the next, and how you can use it to help yourself spiritually. That's really cool. All right, the last one is going to be dreams. Well, not the last one without the clairs, because I want to leave the clairs for last. Dreaming, very important. There are mediums that specialize just in dreaming. There are psychics that's their forte. They don't know how to do readings, but their dream world is their only voice. So in other words, dreams belong to everyone, and everyone can have dreams that are spiritual. Not every dream you have is spiritual. How they work and how that works and how you can bring it on, lucid dreaming and all kinds of dreaming. We can talk about that when we cover dreams, but dreaming is a psychic ability, not regular dreaming at night, but the ones that are to predict, when you have it heightened at such a strong level to predict. And I would like to share my own stories, and maybe some of my clients may want to share some of their stories if you want a video like that. If not, we'll take it on Discord. But I think it would be fun. All right. All right. So finally, we're going to touch on the clairs. So what are they? They're the ones mostly talked about. So there are 6 clairs, and it's interesting because people say, "Oh, your 6th sense." Yes, your 6th sense has 6 senses. So that's confusing, but yeah, there's 6 clairs. Let's go over them. If you have 1 clair, you have them all. It's just that you don't know. You have to be able to develop them. You'll be born, if you're a 10, 11, 12 psychic, you're born with a few of these already activated. And then you'll learn that the other ones come into fruition later, and you have to strengthen them. Okay. And how they pop up and how you use them, that's all technique. And yeah. All right, so the first one is clairvoyance. So clair is clear. Voyance is vision, see, clear seeing. Clairsentience is feeling. sentience, the way something feels, someone feels, clairsentience. Clairaudience is the ear, the hearing. Claircognizance is knowing, an inner knowing. This is the most confused of all. Clairgustance, which is taste, and clairairlience, which is smell, when you smell a reading. So clairairalience, which is, scent. All right, so let's give you an example of clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is when you can clearly see something. All right, what would be an example of clairvoyance? Well, it would be, we went over precognition, that's the future. Clairvoyance is also looking at the past, so retrocognition is under clairvoyance. We went over prophecy, that's also clairvoyance, because you're seeing the information. It's past, present, future, not present, but present is also, you're seeing it. If you connect with something a person's going through and they haven't told you, then that's, obviously that's very important, because that's also clairvoyance, but high level clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is anytime that you're able to see something that the person, let me give you another example. True clairvoyance, let's define it, is when a person knows something about someone else that there's no way they found out, or no way they had no way of knowing. So if someone comes up to me, one time on the stream, someone was saying hello to me, and I said, hey, don't cut your hair. And she said to me, oh my God, I was gonna chop it all off. I have long hair. How did you know that? And I said, just don't, because I saw that they would be miserable. And I had this vision of them having their hair clipped short. And they said, oh my God, thank you. And I said, just don't. And then there was a long story with that. So how would I know on a stream that a person's coming in, and I knew that they were going to cut their hair, and I hadn't seen them in like 8 months. I haven't heard from them, obviously. So the thing is, so when someone comes up to you and they tell you, hey, how's it going? And you say, hey, how's it going? Did you get a new red car? And they'll be like, yeah, yesterday. So that's clairvoyance. There's no way you could know that information. All right, but then again, clairvoyance occurs during mediumship. Clairvoyance can occur during magical practice sessions. Clairvoyance can occur during divination. Clairvoyance can occur during premonitory. Clairvoyance can, happen with prophecy in the moment of a read, and it can also just happen with a conversation. So clairvoyance is clear seeing. It's when a person has that active in their head, in their zone, in their abilities. It's in their aura, their inner core, when it's ignited. So clairvoyance, clear seeing, right? Seeing what that person has not shown you, and you're seeing it. And then there's deep levels of it, high levels of clairvoyancy, where you're able to see things that are hidden. And that's a whole other ballgame. It's going to clairsentience, feeling. So that's that. A lot of people in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, group, psychics, sensitives, spiritual. Everybody has had all of these clairs, at some point, and or some of these abilities that I'm talking about. All right, so everybody has, a way to feel. So this one is called clairsentience, and this is feeling. What does that mean? Ever had a weird feeling in your gut? Not to do something, and then you were right, and you didn't know where the feeling came from? That's the baby level of clairsentience. That's the baby version, with strong versions of it, it gets to a whole other level. And that's just feeling what the person should do, the sense of explaining what they need to do. And then for the person to come back and say, okay, you were right. This led to this, kind of like, like when your intuition is almost like instructional. for the person. Then there's clairaudience. So clairaudient is very unique ability. If you have a clair, you have all the clairs. But if you have your clairaudience very developed, we'll get into how you know it's highly developed and what to watch out for, and how I use it. So, you know, it's just basically you can hear names and information through your outer ear. Like if music is playing right here and I can hear this sound and I bring it close and leave it away, and let's do it like this better so you have a better visual. So if you're listening to music, listening, or listening, the way that if the volume all the way up, the different ranges of tone outside the ear, whereas sometimes the hearing is on the inside. And of course, mental health and alignment is very important for psychic abilities. If a person has any kind of delicate abnormality, mental health diagnoses or anything like that, you know, obviously that's a whole other world. So there's the clairaudience, and then there's knowing. So there's claircognizance, which is knowing, inner knowing. This is the one that confuses people the most. People that are not psychic, they are spiritual or they are sensitive, they will not really know claircognizance. Claircognizance comes from the mastery of the clairs. That's when you can detect what is and what is not. And that comes to the highest group. It is the hardest clair and the one that comes with mastery. There are some 7s that can learn the mastery. 8 and 9 can learn the mastery, but it takes time because it's the trickiest. And we'll leave it at that. Clairgustance is the taste. So gustance, gusto, savor, taste. When you're, these are really mediumship, taste and smell are going to be mediumship category. I'll get into why later if you want to stick around for that. So clairgustance is taste. So when you're doing a reading and you're channeling a loved one, or maybe you're doing a divination reading with tarot and you're looking into maybe someone's love interest. And I was doing a reading one time, and it was a love reading, and a client wanted me to look into like a, you know, her love, her person. And I had this really bitter taste in my mouth of lime and cigarettes. I could smell cigarettes and taste lime and cigarettes, and it was bothering me. And it was this pungent taste and smell. And I said to her, why am I smelling that? Why do I taste that? And she says, oh my God, he has a habit of sucking lime slices, and he's a chain cigarette smoker. I said, oh, ew. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so when you experience, I mean, there's a million examples I can give you, but that's just a good one that popped into mind. When you're experiencing taste and smell from that. So another one that I had was during a mediumship this time, and I kept smelling a very particular talcum powder cologne-y smell, and I described it was a little bit floral, and you know, and I couldn't taste it, but I can smell it. And that's, it was what her aunt would use. Her great aunt, sorry. It was what her great aunt would use. It was a very particular brand. Obviously I didn't know the brand, but later on I went to describe the bottle. You know, and it was just her favorite thing. It was like a signature fragrance for her. And that's another example of you know, smell or scent in a reading. All right, so there you have it. Those are the clairs. We've gone over the most important psychic abilities. Now, what are the other ones? Well, okay, so remember I said in the beginning, there's a lot of spin-offs now. How to be in 2 places at once, or how to break down ice with your mind, or how to move fire with your head, or these are going to be, if you want me to look at all those things, I have tons of explanations and examples for them. they're not really psychic abilities. They are unique experiences under magical practice or conjuring or things like that. And some of them are a type of kinesis that the body can go through. And it's not really like that. It's all like comic book, Hollywood hype stuff. But we can go over very specific examples, and there's stories all over the world of really interesting things that people have gone through. And maybe if you want, we can spend a little time on those. But that's not really, when you think of psychic ability, I've really gone through all of them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, leave them below. I will not address comments that are distasteful or ignorant or anything. I don't have time for that. But if you really want to learn and you are really interested and you like this video, give it a like. You can always join my online communities. I always have extra content. I stream, I give readings, I coach, and yeah, have a good one, guys. Until next time, thank you so much. You can always visit my website and also my shop line. You can always text the shop 954-397-COCO, COCO. It's just a short for 2626. Go figure. There's nothing particular about Coco, or I should say Coco, because it's not Coco, because like the chocolate, it's just Coco, like coconut. Yeah, that's pretty much an easy way to remember it, a mnemonic for it. And if you have any questions, leave it below. If you want me to do any other videos in the future, let me know as well. And until next time, bye. Have a good one.